All right, so today we're diving into the incredible true story of Air Transat Flight 236. It's hands down one of the most remarkable survival stories in the entire history of aviation. Just try to picture this for a second. You're on an overnight flight, heading from Toronto to Portugal, miles above the ocean. And then, that constant drone of the engines, it just vanishes. Gone, plunging you into this eerie silence and total darkness. Well, for the 306 people in that plane, this wasn't some what-if scenario. This was their terrifying new reality. And here's the thing. Before this, no commercial jet had ever run out of fuel mid-flight because of a leak. There was literally no playbook for what to do. So how on earth did a few small mistakes lead to this absolute nightmare? Let's get into it. So where did this all begin? Well, not over the ocean, that's for sure. You've actually got to go back 9 days, to August 15th, 2001. We're in a maintenance hangar, and what should have been a totally routine engine swap is about to go very, very wrong. It all starts with a routine check. They find these little metal chips in the right engine's oil, which is a big, big red flag. Air Transat doesn't have a spare, so they borrow one from Rolls-Royce. But, and this is a big but, they're on a tight deadline, and the computer network with the service manuals is down. So the technicians take a shortcut. And the one thing that could have stopped all of this, the right manual, it was on a CD, sitting in the very same building nobody knew. Okay, so this slide really breaks down the key technical screw-up. See, the Loner engine was a slightly older design, so the fuel and hydraulic tubes didn't line up perfectly. You can think of it like trying to use the wrong charger for your phone. It might kind of look like it fits, but you're just asking for trouble. The mechanic forced mismatched tubes together, which meant two pieces of metal that should never have touched were now grinding against each other. So, with every single flight after that maintenance, the constant engine vibration caused these two tubes to rub and scrape together, slowly but surely wearing away the wall of the fuel line. The plane flew several times just fine, but it was really just a ticking time bomb waiting to burst. All right, let's fast forward. It's the night of August 24th, 2001. The plane is high over the mid-Atlantic, and that ticking time bomb, it's about to go off, setting off a chain reaction of one bad decision after another. And boom, here's the chain reaction. It starts with a tiny crack in that fuel line, but there's no sensor to detect a fuel leak, so the first warning the pilots get is just a fuel imbalance message. Thinking it's just a computer glitch, they make the single biggest mistake of the flight. They open the crossfeed valve to try and balance the fuel tanks. You know, pilots have checklists for pretty much everything. But in this case, instead of grabbing that checklist for a suspected fuel leak, they went from memory. And that one decision? It was like throwing gasoline on a fire. They sent all the fuel from the good left tank directly into the plumbing for the leaking right engine, where it all just poured out into the Atlantic. And here's the really frustrating part. This wasn't some totally unforeseen event. The exact same thing had almost happened just 4 years earlier on an Air France flight. French authorities even recommended that an automated leak warning system be installed. It never was. So the pilots of Flight 236 were flying completely blind with absolutely no idea they were losing every last drop of fuel. At 6:13 in the morning, the right engine flamed out. Silence on one side. Then, just 13 minutes later, the left one goes too. Complete silence. The main generators die. The cockpit goes dark. Cabin lights are out. This massive 200-ton jet is now nothing but a very, very heavy glider. 306, that's how many souls were on board, suddenly just falling through the sky in total silence as their engines went dead. 144 kilometers. That was the immense, impossible distance they had to glide to have any chance of reaching the nearest runway on Lajes Island. And 0, the number of working engines they had to get them there. If they missed that runway, the only other option was the cold, dark Atlantic Ocean. So what now? Their only hope was this little thing called a ram air turbine, or the RAT for short. It's a small propeller that drops out of the plane and uses the airflow from their descent to spin a tiny generator. It gave them just enough power for a few key instruments and a little bit of hydraulic control. It was their only hope. Meanwhile, back in the cabin, things are getting real. Flight attendants are telling everyone to put on life jackets, preparing them to ditch in the ocean. People are screaming, people are praying. One couple, totally accepting they might crash, actually made a plan to swim to shore. The husband turned to his wife and said, "We will need our shoes." Okay, back up front. Captain Robert Pichet and his first officer, Dirk de Jager, are in the fight of their lives. With no engines, there are no second chances, no go-arounds. Pichet has exactly one shot to land this massive aircraft. But here's a crazy bit of luck. If there was one pilot on Earth you'd want in this exact nightmare scenario, it was probably Captain Pichet. Not only was he an experienced glider pilot, but he'd also been a bush pilot. He knew how to land planes in the middle of nowhere without a runway. And that skill set? It was about to be put to the ultimate test. So at 6:45 in the morning, after gliding for an unprecedented 19 minutes, which, by the way, is a world record for a commercial jet, and covering nearly 144 kilometers with zero power, they see the runway. The plane comes in way too fast, touches down hard, the tires burst from the insane braking, sparks are flying everywhere, but unbelievably, they are on solid ground. And get this. In under 2 minutes, every single one of those 306 people is evacuated from the plane. The result is it's a miracle. Despite that high-speed, unpowered landing, there were 0 fatalities. The only injuries were a couple of serious ones and 16 minor ones, mostly just scrapes and bruises from coming down the evacuation slides. Now, the crew were instantly hailed as heroes, and rightly so for what they pulled off. But when the investigators dug in, they found this wasn't a story about one single failure. It was a story about many small failures, all lining up in a perfect, catastrophic storm. And this brings us to the key lesson here, what investigators call the Swiss cheese effect. Think about it like this. Every layer of safety is a slice of Swiss cheese with a few random holes. A disaster can only happen when all the holes in every single slice, the maintenance mistake, the missing manual, the lack of a warning system, the crew's error, all line up perfectly. And on this flight, they did. The whole story of Flight 236 is it's a powerful and pretty humbling reminder, right? It shows you that our most complicated systems are only as strong as their weakest links. And sometimes it takes a whole chain of human error, system flaws, and just plain bad luck to create a crisis. But it also takes extraordinary skill and maybe a little bit of good luck to survive it.